So the last two in my kind of like early round 2 or like early round 3, late round 2 tier. And yeah, Chubb's getting bumped out of there. So I'm going to kind of get rid of him. You only kind of further convince me why I need to do that. But I have James Conner and then Javonte Williams rounding out this tier. I know the regression argument, and that's probably what you're going to have for Conner. I fully get it. But then I also love the fact that it just the Cardinals under Cliff Kingsbury have always been a big running in the red zone team. 7th, 4th, and 3rd in rushing touchdowns, top 5 and inside the 10 carries all 3 of those years, whether it was Kenyon Drake, whether it was James Conner, whether it was David Johnson while he was healthy. They've always just hammered running back carries. And I think Conner's just that much more efficient at capping these drives off than Kenyon Drake was. So no, is he going to get 18 touchdowns again? Probably not. But then you balance that out with the receiving bump he got when there was no Chase Edmonds, 5.4 targets per game. I love your guy, Jake Tribby, one of my favorite follows. I appreciate that. He had a great one in the 5 games without Chase Edmonds, 20.7 half PPR points per game. It was actually over 23 fantasy points per game if you do PPR, which was more than Jonathan Taylor. 20.8 touches per game, 5.4 targets, and 100% of the backfield goal line carries. Obviously, Edmonds is gone. Yes, they have Darrell Williams there, but it's like a veteran minimum contract. Benjamin can fuck off. He's not going to ever be a thing. So I really like Conner. I know I'm higher on him than a lot of people. What's your take on Conner this year?
Yeah, I kind of hate him. I kind of just hate him. So he is a massive touchdown regression candidate. And I wrote that up, but I've started to walk it back just a little bit because, I mean, on one hand, I do think volume declines. Kyler Murray had 11 rushing touchdowns in 2020 and then only 5. So I think that regresses.
Good point.
But yeah, like you look at his XTD and it's like, okay, he should have averaged like 4 fewer fantasy points per game. Like his numbers were absurd. But he's also been the most efficient goal line back over the last 3 seasons. And that's not nothing. So I have walked that back. What it comes down to me is I think the threat of a committee is far more likely than at least ADP implies. And it's just, what has Cliff Kingsbury done? All he's ever done is maintain a heavy committee backfield with one workhorse, one scat back. And that's all he's ever done, except exclusively when one of those 2 running backs has suffered an injury, he's let them be a bell cow. And we've seen this over many seasons. So last year in games Edmonds played, James Conner saw less work, less snaps, less XFP than Chase Edmonds. He averaged 11.2 fantasy points per game. Edmonds averaged more. When Edmonds returned for the playoffs following injury, he immediately outsnapped Conner 52% to 25%. And when Conner missed time, Edmonds got the role that Conner had, that bell cow role, 17 carries, 7 targets per game. What happened in 2020? Kenyon Drake missed a game. Edmonds played on 96% of the snaps, saw 25 carries, 3 targets. In week 7 of 2019, David Johnson got hurt. Drake wasn't yet on the team. Edmonds totaled 35 fantasy points on 27 carries, 4 targets. That next week, Edmonds suffered an in-game injury, but he played on 90% of the snaps up to that point. He does what I think the Saints have always done. You lose one guy, okay, now you have a bell cow, but we want a committee approach. And then you look at what's going on in the periphery, and it's all alarming to me. Because remember, last year, I had a lot of Conner. I don't know why. I didn't really write him up persuasively, but I just kept grabbing him, luckily. But he was deader than dirt. People were like, he's the most injury-prone player in football. He was unproductive and inefficient last season, and Cliff Kingsbury always employs a committee backfield. What happened last year? He ranked 22nd in yards from scrimmage per game. Touchdowns were really doing the heavy lifting. He ranked in between Edmonds and Duke Johnson in yards per scrimmage. He ranked dead last in yards per carry among all running backs with at least 200 carries. And you know what? He probably still is the most injury-prone player in football, but it's not at all priced into ADP. Where I can go wrong with this is the contract. He's the 11th highest paid running back in the NFL. I could be underrating his talents. When he's healthy, minus that 2020 season, he's always been an easy RB1. He's a very underrated pass catcher, but I'm fading him. And I'm drafting Williams on that minimum contract, Benjamin, who might be a joke. But I just given his injury history, given Kingsbury's history of letting a backup become a bell cow when there's an injury and the upside that implies, that's the route I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely taking Darrell Williams whenever I take Connor, and typically, even when I take, if I take Connor, I'm definitely taking Darrell Williams, and even if I don't, I like Darrell Williams for all the reasons you cited. The RB2 in the Cardinals offense has been absolutely monstrous. I guess the only question I would have, I don't know if you could hear me from.
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Is who would that scat back be? Because the contract you mentioned. And then the fact that Connor was the number 3 graded receiving running back of PFF. He caught 37 of 39 targets. He was their highest graded pass blocking running back as well. I don't see them necessarily taking him out of those downs. I still see him getting all of those goal line carries. Maybe he gets a little bit of a breather on early down work from Darrell Williams, who is a pretty good pass catcher too. I think he's going to be a monster if and when he has to fill in for Connor, just like he was for CEH last year. But that's how I attack it. I love a round 3 James Conner. He's going at the end of round 3. I love the fact that he could average 20 points per game. I can get him there, assuming Kamara's gone, of course. And then I go Darrell Williams. I kind of treat it like a lot. You cited the Saints. I almost treat it as a Saints light where I can do Connor, Darrell Williams for cheap and just kind of lock up the backfield, because I really do think Connor's going to be very productive and kind of shake those committee ways, given he's the best receiving option they have with Edmonds gone. That's my opinion. Who do you see kind of taking the scat back role from him?
Yeah. So again, like I think that's the out, is like I'm just underrating his talents, and like all that makes sense. But I try not to underrate coaching stubbornness.
Yeah.
And to me, it just seems like maybe it's both the running backs combining for this role, or it's an open competition at this point. I think both running backs have like underrated standalone value. I think, Edmonds was definitely better than both. I think Connor probably should be the bell cow. But not for nothing. I mean, like, I get it. Like, Benjamin's a joke, but they've been raving about him nonstop since January.
I know.
December.
That would sicken me if he had that hype end up coming.
I know.
Oh, God, that would be brutal. We got to move on. I can't talk about Benjamin. I'm sorry.
What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.